And we're live. Good morning or good afternoon or good evening, depending on where you are watching. This is Healthcare Thought Leadership, and I'm Marion Spears Carr, and I am so glad you're here. If you're watching live or you watch the recording, please post in the comments where you're watching from, because we would love to have you participate. Let us know that you're here. I'll tell you, I've done a lot of these shows over the last year and a half, but I've been more excited about this one than many because of my guests. Today, we are talking about the topic of this idea around where it's important, even more so than ever in 2023, about building connected, impactful HR teams. And my guest, and I'm gonna let her introduce herself a little bit, but is someone I've admired and have known for a very long time, is Janet Smith Hill. She's a Chief Human Resources Officer at SSM Health in Missouri, but she's so much more. She's been recognized for her work in diversity. She's a professional coach. And Janet, I just honored to have you on the show, and thank you for accepting my invitation. How are you this afternoon?
I'm doing well. Thanks, Marion. And I really do appreciate your kind words. It's been a pleasure to know you all these years. And the fact that we can still connect, even virtually, is just a privilege. So, and to talk about this topic, oh my goodness, so important and just such real fun for me because it's been an anthem of my life, not just my work career, but of my life. So, thank you for inviting me to chat about it.
Absolutely. For those of you who are watching maybe Healthcare Thought Leadership, my LinkedIn live show for the first time, this was a show that I started to really highlight these amazing people that I've known, had in my network in healthcare, life sciences, and a lot of different aspects. But what the whole goal of the show is really to share some thoughts around how can we be better at leaders, how can we be better at what we do, and how can we lead our organization differently. So, Jan, when I reached out to you, this was the one thing. There's a lot of things I've admired about you, I mentioned, but one of the things I've always known about you is how you work to build these teams that are not just insulated within the context of human resources, but also are fully engaged and fully connected strategically in the whole, really ultimately in supporting the mission of care. And I would love for you to just to talk a little bit about kind of that journey at first. And then I'd love to get into some conversations around what's changed, what's important in 2023 to keep in mind, and why is it so important that the HR partners need specifically to be very strategically engaged in that piece and connected internally as well. So that's a big, broad question that you and I have bounced around, but I'd love for you to just start and share your thoughts in that regard.
Sure. I guess for me, Marion, many times when you're actually doing something, you don't really think about the technique or the way you are doing it, or even why you're doing it the
Mm-hmm.
way you're doing it. It's almost tacit or a little bit unconscious. And that's probably credit to my story and my background. So, yes, I do lead HR, been leading HR for, gosh, 20 plus years.
Mm-hmm.
It's kind of interesting to think about it because by background and education, I am a nurse.
Yes.
And so I've been a clinical nurse and I continued progressively with more and more leadership responsibility in nursing administration. And so I think my ability to really see what the business is doing, especially in healthcare, in which I've spent my whole career, is tied to the fact that I get it, from the clinical perspective, being in front of patients. I understand what that's like and what we need from a human resources sort of chassis to help
Mm-hmm.
people in the field who are actually delivering the care be successful. And I recognize that when I stepped into HR, it's not only about the clinicians. Of course, it's about the clinicians and
Mm-hmm.
healthcare. Healthcare is our product, but it's about everybody. It's about all people being able to do their very best work unleashed to thrive so that together we make remarkable differences for people. So that has been, I guess, a calling card that I didn't even really recognize, to be honest, because it's just so embedded and ingrained and endemic in who I am. And I think that's probably why in the HR space, I can connect so easily with operational leaders because
Mm-hmm.
I've been there. And I would say to all the HR colleagues out there, it's not just enough to be at the table or have a seat at the table, which we've been talking about for at least 25 years,
Yeah,
having, right, having a
exactly.
seat at the
Yeah.
table. But it is about being the business leader who brings to the table HR centric expertise.
Hmm.
So if you start with, I've got to understand the business just like any other business leader would. And then the magic is how to ensure that we're bringing in the human component that, of course, powers all of our businesses. They're all built on people. So I do think that that is, um, as I look back, I think that is really the bedrock of my ability to, kind of help build these teams that understand the strategic purpose of why we even exist.
I love that from the perspective of that nursing background, but also that recognition of, yes, the clinical people are so important, what you mentioned, but also that it literally takes everybody. And one of the things that I've been working on is teaching leaders in healthcare on how to use a framework of gratitude
Mhm.
to improve behaviors and really be authentic around connecting. And it's interesting in the workshops we've been doing, that topic has been brought up over and over again, particularly in the pandemic, where
Yeah,
there's unsung heroes. Like everybody was unsung heroes. Let's put it out there. But the food service workers and the and the
absolutely.
supply people, all that's so important to the piece of that
Right.
that whole process. That was absolutely important. Let me shout out Deborah Stamps is checking in. If you're watching live, let us know in the comments. And if you have questions for Janet about her work, about these topics that we're talking about, please post them in the comments. And we're glad you're here. Janet, one of the things that you and I've talked about is the critically important piece of being engaged with the organization, and within the organization being seen as a strategic partner, not just an HR department, not just a
Right.
department as a side piece
Right.
of, like, let's face it, a lot of times it, you've been around a long time. I've been around a long time. I started in healthcare recruiting in 1991. A lot of times HR was just seen as like a necessary evil.
Right.
But today that's not where we need to be. What are some key things that HR leaders can start focusing on to be represented at the table? In other words, what are the things that we need to be talking about so that we connect in that regard? Does that make sense?
Totally. I think we have a gift. At this time brings us a gift to be able to really engage because the number one, in all my readings and all the literature I'm seeing, all the
Hmm.
journals I'm looking through, the number one concern right now, top of mind for CEOs everywhere, is this thing called workforce.
Yeah.
And as we're thinking about, and we've had, war for talent, that's probably been at least 15 or 20 years, kind of
Yeah. Exactly.
the right. And so the competition for talent and all of that is still very much alive. Um, but HR concerns being the number one issue has really been not an opportunity in my career. In my career,
Yeah.
it's been in the top three, the
Yeah.
top five, but it is number one these days. And I think that that is, of course, because we saw that sort of accelerated. We double clicked into that during the pandemic. And so while the pandemic revealed a lot of things that we have to fix,
Yeah.
fundamentally are broken, and no one now can doubt that we actually have to pay attention to some of the inequities and disparities that exist and the reasons that they exist. It does also give us a chance to reconnect with our people. What fuels me is this talk about the importance of our people and how what they bring to the table, their ability to think innovatively, their ability to think out of the box and provide value to the business that helps it advance, it helps it adapt, that helps it mature. That's really in your people. So if you
Hmm.
think of your people as a means to an end, and
Hmm.
I've encountered that,
Yeah.
then that's you'll get an outcome. But if you think of your people as a place where you want to invest, where you need to know them from a place of authenticity, that they're not robotic, we're not widgets for sure, that
Hmm.
we have. a way of being. We have a unique set of skills that we want to find expression,
Mhm.
because at the core, I believe that we're all made in the image of God, imago Dei, and because of that, we have a desire to have meaningful connections. We have a desire to be purposeful in our work. We have a desire to be a part of something that's bigger than we are and contribute to good in the world. And so, because of that, if we can figure out how to tap into that and leverage that, then everyone wins. The customers win, the business is successful, and the people actually feel fulfilled. So that has been a lifelong, journey for me. And I've had some real successes when that's embraced.
Mhm.
And that is where I would challenge all of us to get to figure out what it is that helps people feel meaningful, connection and purposeful activity. It's almost like we all know Simon Sinek and his, start with your why.
Yeah.
Find out
Yes.
what that is and
Mhm.
how we can then mold that and meld that into something that is real and that can bring value to people and that really does set us apart. Dan Cable wrote a book, and in it, he really talks about the competitive advantage. And he talks about, if you want to stand out, you have to have a product that's of value. And I think all of us would say, check. We understand
Yeah.
that it has to be valuable. Somebody has
Yep.
to want it, exchange some sort of median, usually money, to in exchange for that value. But you
Mhm.
also have to create something that is rare. It has to be hard to find in order to set you apart. And in a similar thought, it also has to be difficult to emulate. So if we think about those three things, things that are valuable, rare, and hard to imitate,
Mhm.
then we begin to have the ingredients that create a successful recipe. And people would be the only solution that I could think of that hit all three of those pieces. Now, obviously, I'm really happy about all the technological advances. I think that that's great, and we definitely need to move in lockstep with technology.
Mhm.
I think it's super. It doesn't, however, replace the human element. People do long for connection. As I said in the pandemic, there's this sense of isolation that occurred, and depression and anxiety and suicidal ideation that grew. And everyone knows all those things, but I think it has to do with we're made for community. We're made to be able to connect with others, and to do something together brings greater satisfaction than doing it alone. Not only does it bring greater satisfaction, it brings bigger outcomes as well. So I get joy when we get to synergize around that and bring to bear on a topic, a challenge, an area, something that none of us could accomplish by ourselves.
I've been at conferences a lot this year, in-person conferences, which has been different than obviously the last couple of years. And that one piece you're talking about wanting to belong, wanting to connect,
Mhm.
has been eye-opening. I'm like we're people, we probably never go anywhere where we don't talk to five people we don't know, probably, right?
Yep.
But I've just noticed that there's that theme of let's get connected, let's talk, it's pretty amazing. I was at the Chicago Healthcare Executives Forum, which is the ACHE chapter in Chicago's awards meet dinner last week.
Hmm.
It's their first in-person meeting since the pandemic.
Uh-huh.
It was standing room only, Janet.
Wow. Yeah.
But the part about it was everybody wanted to be together.
Yeah.
Everybody wanted to be connected. So I think
Yeah.
about those strategic things that you were just talking about
Right.
what's rare and what's in shortage. That's a piece that is there. Like people
Right.
want to connect, and when we create that, I love that. And so let me give a shout out. Tracy Bowers is checking in. Thank you,
Oh, hey,
Tracy. We both know
Tracy.
Tracy. She's saying hi, Marion and Janet. She goes, I worked with you for many years, and she's a mentor and a friend, and
Yes.
I believe that.
Yeah.
I believe
Tracy's
that
great.
true. And there's another comment I want to bring up in a moment, but I want to come back to this idea around and we're kind of beating the same drum, but one of the things, a lot of people that watch my show
Mhm.
are not only senior leaders, senior executives that I've worked with over the years, but also a lot of young leaders.
Mhm.
A lot of young leaders who have come into the industry at a crazy time, healthcare particularly at a crazy time, but in work in general at a crazy
Mhm.
time. They may not be working in HR. They may not be completely connected necessarily to the HR piece, but they're impacted by it. What are some things that you would like to share with young leaders about how to connect, how to engage, and how to learn about the human resources approach, and how can they connect with their peers? How can they connect with the senior leaders? How can they learn about this value that you're talking about?
So keep me honest, Marion. If I could maybe start with a bit of context and
Yeah,
then make
please.
sure that I answer your question. So I'm actually reading. This is Women's History Month. You guys probably
Yes,
know that.
I
And
did. I do. I actually
yes,
do.
yeah, there
I
you go.
saw a post only because of somebody posted it on LinkedIn. I'm not completely on top of everything. I just happened to
I
see the
hear you.
post. I was like, okay,
I hear you.
I got it.
So what I am doing, and I'm realizing it, is of course the theme for the month that the National Women's History Month Alliance has come up with is around celebrating the women who tell our stories.
Mhm.
Okay, celebrating the women who tell our stories. So one might sort of look at that theme and do a pivot backwards and remember all of the women who've told their stories and whose stories we tell today. But there's also a temporary, a contemporary ability to contemporize that a bit
Mhm.
that I'd like to talk about that. And that is via even a book that I'm reading right now, the second book that Michelle Obama has written, and it's called The Light We Carry. And I've just begun the book, but she
Mhm.
starts by really emphasizing the importance and the ubiquitous power of story of
Yes.
story. Everyone, no matter the station in life, no matter what job, what role, you have a story. You have a story. And what she posits is that it's the stories, the commonalities of stories that connect us
Mhm.
with each other. So she told a story in the book, and it was a part of my story that I shared with a group on Wednesday in one of our
Mhm.
town hall meetings because I identified with it so easily. And then I have heard ripples about people who identified with the story that I told, which
Okay.
was
Yeah.
essentially the
Absolutely.
story
Yeah.
that Michelle told. Different characters, different
Mhm.
places, different geography, but the
Yeah.
essence was the same. So it just reminded me of the power of story. And
Mhm.
if in our story we can be authentic and honest because it's
Mhm.
our story, then that has enormous power because you're not likely the only one who's had a similar experience, certainly not the only one who has the range of emotions that that story tells. So, what I would say to young leaders who want to get connected is be yourself. Be yourself and share your story to the extent that you're comfortable. No, I'm not
Yes.
saying the deep dark secrets. I'm not saying that. But to the extent that you're able to bring some of yourself
Yeah.
to the conversation or to the relationship, that's what really the glue of the relationship is built on is authenticity. So I know there's a lot going on about imposter syndrome, and I
Yes.
think that that has there's some validity to that. There's some veracity to that idea, but just be yourself. Nobody's perfect. Nobody is God. Your experience is what you experience, and just be open to new experiences because as you are, you learn and you grow and you evolve. It is the diversity of experience that helps you become a fuller person. So I would say start
Mhm.
there, kind of know yourself, understand your story, and share it to the extent that you're possible and comfortable. The next thing I would say is, and then sort of find your tribe. The
That's correct.
people,
That's huge.
right?
That's
Right.
absolutely huge.
Who
Yes.
kind of, agree with you, not every single thing, because again, I
Right.
just said diversity is important,
Yeah.
but find where there's a mainstream where you can identify, right? And you can
Mhm.
connect with, and there is so much strength in finding people who are similarly situated or going a similar path to you even if they don't believe every single thing that you believe, because we know that people have differences of opinion. But find where you can have camaraderie and comfort and challenge.
Yes.
And that will help you start to have the confidence and the calmness to step into that space, lean into the fullness of who you are, because all of us are 100,000% originals. We have
No,
commonalities, but we're still our nuances, the way we would interact with things. It's all original. So own that,
yes.
embrace that. And then once you've done that, then you're more comfortable networking. You're more
Hmm.
comfortable being with people, even if I know those of you who are Myers-Briggs fans would say,
Yeah.
oh, but I'm an introvert. I
Yeah.
know that. I get it. But that just means that you get fuel from reflection and introspection. It
Yeah.
doesn't mean that you're allergic to people.
I'm so writing that down. Quote. That is the quote of the year right there.
Mhm.
Just because you're an introvert doesn't mean you're allergic to people.
Right.
I'm obviously, you've known me for a long time, Janet,
Mhm.
and I put it out there. I just put it out there. So the introvert is not a part of my DNA, but I do work with a lot of them. And I love this idea around being authentic.
Mhm.
But also, I want to go back. So we're really talking about this. This is really on point. And by the way, great conversations going on in the comments. Uh, Amazing, and we'll respond to those. Thank you for being in the. And if by the way, if you're watching live, please let us know that you are. I love to know where you're watching from, or if you watch the recording, please put in the comments and let us know who you are, and what questions you might have for Jen. And if you have questions, please post them up. Uh, Couple key things that you said there that really ties back to building these teams that are impactful, and this idea around there's a lot of talk, obviously a lot of talk in the last few years over diversity and equity in the space, and there's a lot of there's so much work still be done there. But one of the things
Amen,
that
brother.
just right, that just struck me when you said finding your tribe is this idea around diversity of thought. It's not just that you're different than I am.
That's
You
right.
might come from whatever different socioeconomic background,
Yeah.
but within those socioeconomic backgrounds, there's also diversity of thought and being
Absolutely.
open. Even if we don't agree,
That's right.
you can still be a part of our tribe because that's how we learn. I'd love for you to talk. I know that's a little bit more off topic than what we were thinking about, but
That's
that
right.
is so valuable.
Yes.
I'd love to beat that drum a little bit.
So, research has indicated that diverse teams, diverse in many dimensions,
Yes.
outperform more homogeneous teams time over time, right?
Yep.
So, if indeed you're thinking about neurodiversity or cognitive diversity, it is something that is so important. And what you said, Marion, relative to even within a similar dimension,
Yeah.
there are so many subcultures
Exactly.
within that. I mean, I'm African American. You probably surmised that, but heaven knows, I've been asked to speak on behalf of all African Americans because I'm the only one in the room, and that's impossible,
Not
right?
possible. Not
Impossible.
absolutely
I
not
mean,
possible.
the greatest example of diversity is like with me and my husband. We think way differently. So, so I'm
I
just saying,
understand that.
yeah, just because you share dimension or even a prominent dimension with someone else does not mean that there's going to be similarity of thought for its own sake.
Yes.
What typically happens is people, however, who might look the same could have a shared experience,
Yes.
and if that shared experience is similar, then it's often concluded that they are the same, but they're still not the same because we're different people, we process things differently. Although the value of that is that you can draw generalizations that then you have to check out, right?
Yes.
So generally speaking is how I like to start sentences when people ask me some sort of DEI question, right?
Yes.
Generally speaking, but the key is getting to know people as people and their own preferences and their own thoughts and their own ideas, because
Mhm.
that's going to vary from person to person. So the value of d- diversity in all its dimensions. That's the way we think about it
Yes.
around here at SSM Health and in my past.
Yes.
It's how we are alike and how we're different, but how we leverage all of it for some bigger purpose. And so, in my mind, of course, cognitive diversity is one of the dimensions.
It's
And
one of them. Yeah. It's just
yeah,
one. But there's so many different ones. And like, even though I grew up in the South, born and raised in North Carolina, you know where I'm from, Janet. I grew up in
mhm,
Concord, lived in
yep,
most of my life in North Carolina till I moved to Georgia.
mhm,
My life experience was really interesting too. I actually got to spend time in Europe. I've been all over. I've been around a lot of different, um, like African Americans and Asian. I mean, I've worked internationally,
mhm,
and it's interesting that I think for me that really made the shift was just like stop assuming that they're this way. Let me go. Let's talk about the human component. Let's learn them as a person first,
ab-
and then we
absolutely,
can understand the
absolutely,
context from which they came from, and now we're more engaged, and
absolutely.
um, I
And
love
that
that.
is, and that is the key. Get to know the people for the people that they are.
Yes.
And while there'll be some commonalities, there'll also be some surprises, likely.
Oh
And
yeah.
that's the value of your relationships and how you build them, and really the strength of your network. And honestly, your own, for me, my own level of satisfaction, right? Because as I'm evolving, I want to learn things that I haven't yet experienced. I want to be able to branch out because if I do that, my aperture widens and I
Yes.
can see more things than I
Yes.
could if it's more narrow. And that advantages me as a leader because if I'm able to do that, I can adapt. I can understand better how something I do or I'm planning may land on
Yes.
a diverse audience. And never do we want to be offensive. So that's always information
Yeah.
that's valuable. So it's really, really a life long sort of journey around trying to get your hands around what it means by DE&I, and it's always evolving. No
Yeah.
matter what an expert you may claim yourself to be, uh,
Exactly.
I just 2 weeks ago, I've been doing this work for 30 some years. 2 weeks ago, I learned something new, never heard of it before in the DEI space. So you just got to be open, always open. And if you are, you learn something new almost every day.
And that ties back to our topic around HR being impactful and engaging. This is where human resources leaders can build a platform of education and
Hmm.
saying let's spread that lens, let's expand that aperture. I love that. I
Hmm.
love that particular analogy or metaphor.
Hmm.
And that's where the HR leader can really move from what's seen as tactical, we need you, to now, oh, wait a minute, you're helping me see as a leader my workforce, my community, the people we serve completely differently, and that's going to make us better. I love that we went that way. There's one
Hmm.
thing I want to point out. We're almost out of time, which is
Oh,
amazing. I
goodness.
knew this was going to happen. I knew
Okay.
this was going to happen because you and I have so much. Uh,
You mean because I
uh,
talk a lot? Is that why?
no, because you like we could go. There's a whole lot of rabbit holes that you and I could have went. I literally already have in my mind 3 new shows. So you're going to be on a series, and if you'll accommodate me. One thing I wanted to point out to our listeners is something that was really that you've pointed out, and it's something I place a lot of value in, is reading and learning, continuous learning. You've mentioned at least 4 books in our conversation
Mhm.
today. Um, I, as a leader, I'm going to try to. We're running out of time, but I would love for you to talk about how that's impacted how you
Mhm.
see your role,
Oh, yeah.
and how that's valuable, because I think that's a massive point that I hope people took away from, along with a lot of others. But anyway, what are your thoughts on that?
I would say that leaders are readers. Um, because you can't be there and do it all, you can't experience it. If you limit your exposure to only what you can do,
Mhm.
then it's very limited, right?
Yeah.
It's a smaller world in which you have to operate. But if you broaden that and you think about living vicariously through the experiences of others that you may read about, places you've never gone, you can envision now in your mind. Not only are you more educated, but you now have more tools in your tool belt.
Yeah.
Because again, I'm an avid reader, and you all might think I'm a little bit weird, but I love business books. So I don't
Yeah,
read a
I do
lot of
too. I
fiction.
do too.
I don't read a lot of fiction. My library everywhere is full of different types of books around business topics. So I think if you're in the marketplace, that's probably key. You really need to do that because things are evolving so quickly. They're advancing so fast. If you wait to have the experience yourself, then you're missing out on like 80% of the stuff there is to learn. So you just get an expanded point of view through reading. And so I would just encourage all of you to, find the things that you like to read. I do need to diversify some of my reading, I admit,
Yeah,
because it is hardcore, business books, but I love them. I love them. And so I won't stop. And
yeah,
it's just important that area of diversity is allowed into your business life. Because for me, especially if that business book is built on values and principles and things that I
exactly.
just live, then they enhance me. So that's a short way of saying the value of reading for me is just unestimable.
Well, that's a great way to end it because I think what I heard is this lifelong learning and commitment to what you're doing is a continuous process. It's
Always.
not just what I knew 5 years ago, what I knew 20. So I love that. Janet, we are literally out of time. I've
Wow.
posted how they can connect with you on LinkedIn.
Okay. Yeah.
Thank you for being on the show. For those of you who are watching, this is Healthcare Thought Leadership, my LinkedIn Live show. I'm Marion Spears Carr. I lead an executive search company called Comar Partners, their healthcare practice. I've been in this business a long time, and Janet's one of my favorite people, just somebody I really admire. So, Janet, I'm honored to have you on the show. If think about it, I'd love to. There's so much more to unpack, but I would
I
love for
hear
you to
you.
come back. Yeah.
Well, I have loved being with you. Thank you so much for the invitation, and just let me know what we might do in the future.
Absolutely.
All right.
Have a great Friday. And we're gonna go off the air for those of you who are watching. Please like and share. The recording will be available if you want to share it with your friends or your colleagues. And have a great day. And
All
we
right.
will go off the air right now.
Thanks, Marion.